South Carolina's Low Country, an incredible place to call home. Once a hidden gem, now a popular diamond in the rough. But our beauty tells one story. Our resiliency tells another. At WCBD, we're committed to bring you what you need to know, from the daily forecasts.
And here's the track, again, approaching the South Carolina coast.
To historic severe weather.
Josh, perfect to your words. It's nasty right now. I mean, you can see it.
That shaped the Low Country forever.
Hurricane Hugo. He is on his way. Rob says expected to make landfall around midnight or so.
Yeah, a little after midnight.
Storm Team 2 is in our community, getting you prepared and forecasting the storm, past to present.
Hello and welcome to our News 2 Hurricane Special, our annual program to help you get ready for storms, small and large, as hurricane season is officially underway as of June 1st. I'm the Low Country's Chief Meteorologist, Rob Fowler, joined by the rest of our Storm Team 2, Josh Marthers, Olivia Lawrence, and Grace Lau.
Over the next half hour, we're going to take a look back at storms that have shaped our coastline and a look at current preparations that are underway.
Right now, we're standing at one of the Low Country's favorite waterfront destinations, the Isle of Palms.
It's like paradise here. Paths to the ocean lined with palmetto trees and homes with charming wraparound porches.
And some of these beaches have been through more than meets the eye. Hugo, Michael, and more recently, Ian. As we begin another hurricane season, the slate is clean. It doesn't matter what happened last year, 5 years ago, 34 years ago. We have the same chance of being impacted this year as any year in the past. It's our job here at Storm Team 2 to give you what you need to stay ahead of any storm which could impact us. It's the National Hurricane Center's job to watch every storm and make sure we all stay safe. I had a chance to talk to the new director of the NHC, Dr. Michael Brennan, to take a peek behind the curtains of what is happening there on a daily basis.
Looking at universities where I could get a bachelor's degree in meteorology, I was looking at some options and decided to choose NC State. Started there in 1996. Did my undergraduate and graduate work there, finished up in 2005. So it was a great place, great people, great education, and really sort of set the foundation for my career path.
Dr. Brennan started doing research work on satellite data, looking at ocean winds and how that information could be used in tropical cyclone analysis. He then went on to what is now called the Weather Prediction Center in Washington, D.C. He eventually came back to the National Hurricane Center in late 2008, bringing us to April of this year, being named director.
A very visible job. It's a huge honor to be able to lead such a great group of forecasters and administrative staff and technical folks. We just have such a great team at the Hurricane Center, and to be able to represent them and the rest of the National Weather Service, especially on the hurricane program side, and work with you and the media. They're such an important part of our team to get the message out to people. We do so much outreach and training, emergency managers, the media. We have a huge international responsibility. So it's a big role, but very excited to step into it.
Dr. Brennan knows how important his job is and how decisions he and his team make are potentially life-saving decisions.
It certainly is a job you don't take lightly. There's a lot of, you're helping to communicate to people on, some of the most dangerous situations they might ever find themselves in terms of natural hazards in their life.
As you know, it's been a busy few years lately, including a record 30 named storms in 2020. Dr. Brennan and his team know this could happen again with more and more people moving into hurricane-prone areas.
You hate to see, we've known and we've seen over the last few years, tremendously impactful hurricanes, multiple Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes. We've seen tremendous flooding from storms like Harvey and Florence and Ida. But it just goes to reinforce how important the work we do is, and the life-saving work that the Hurricane Center and the rest of the Weather Service and the rest of the hurricane program do. So every storm you learn lessons from, but they're, again, always a reminder of why we're here and how important our jobs are.
Is there any one particular storm that you go back and you think, wow, that actually changed the way I think or changed my personality maybe just a little bit? I know me personally, I went through Hurricane Hugo, and I'll never look at a hurricane, the same.
I think back to Hurricane Sandy and how we've come a long way in terms of communicating transitioning storms and the threat of water and storm surge in particular. You can go back to Ike in 2008. Again, some of those early storms were the impetus for pushing ahead with these storm surge products and the storm surge watch warning and really getting that over the line. But I think about storms like Michael that rapidly intensified to Category 5 at landfall in the Florida Panhandle. And just, it's just a very sobering thing to watch when you know what's going to play out on those types of days when you have a major hurricane landfall. So I think, again, you carry a piece of every one of those storms with you going forward.
What's your message to our people who live here?
Because it has been a long time since you've been affected by a major hurricane. Charleston's a very, very vulnerable area to storm surge. The water hazards are what kill the most people. So if you live in one of those storm surge evacuation zones, please get your hurricane plan together now. Know where you're going to go to keep yourself safe.
Right now, we're going to take a look at hurricanes of the past, some that have really battered our coastline. Josh is here to take a look at that.
Rob, since 2016, we've had 5 named storms hitting the Palmetto State's beaches, and that's been lowering our defense to storm surge, especially up on the Georgetown County coast. Recent severe weather, including the impacts of Hurricane Ian, left significant damage. Pawleys Island in particular was hit. I took a trip up there to see how the island is preparing for future storms.
It became a more severe situation than we ever could imagine when that storm, entered into the Atlantic.
Matthew, Florence, Dorian, Ian, all bringing significant impacts to Georgetown County since 2016, each storm having its own personality. Flooding rain, storm surge, and strong wind gusts pummeled the beaches, particularly Pawleys Island, with the most recent damage occurring last fall from Hurricane Ian.
The pier, although it's private at the condo place, was completely destroyed. That generated a lot of debris on our beaches.
Daniel Newquist, Pawleys Island's town administrator, says other docks and piers on the marsh side of the island were destroyed or damaged as well.
We have debris that's still in the creek. So, we're working through that to, that could potentially be a debris hazard if another storm surge occurred.
Damage to the island's dune system occurred as a storm surge breached the dune line in many areas.
We had the National Weather Service come out to kind of identify where the peak of the storm surge occurred. But yeah, I think our estimate is like 6 feet.
So where we're standing right now, we're talking this is up here.
Yeah, my point.
Was it that high right here? Enough water to cover island roadways with sand and cause water damage to buildings and homes. Looking forward, Dan says Ian pointed out the importance of properly communicating impact.
It was difficult. There was no state-mandated evacuation, and it kind of came up on people. There were a lot of visitors still. It was still the wedding season, shoulder season, so a lot of folks just didn't know what to do in that scenario. So I think that's maybe a lesson learned on how to advise folks of what the potential threat is and make sure that they're safe through the storm duration.
This storm, just one example of the focus needed on individual threats to specific areas, instead of focusing on the center line of the forecast track or the category of the storm.
Coming up.
When we come back, lessons learned more than 3 decades ago still making a difference today. How a Low Country men and local leaders are still using knowledge gained during Hurricane Hugo to protect us today.
You're watching Forecasting the Storm. Past to present.
1989, it's a year that brings back memories of trees and houses, boats and streets, and broken bridges for millions of people, especially right here in South Carolina. I'm joined now by News 2's Carolyn Murray. Carolyn, you had a chance to speak with a retired South Carolina National Guardsman.
Yeah, Rob, Jay Waddell tells me that lessons he learned 34 years ago are still helping us prepare and keep our property protected today.
Picture of the bridge in the intercoastal. That was a net result of 160 mile an hour wind lifting the bridge off the pedestal. King Street, right down there where the buildings continue. I mean, they literally blew the front of the buildings off.
As he pointed to pictures of Charleston and the Sea Islands after Hurricane Hugo,
Francis Marion National Forest
was completely shot.
Jay Waddell says he recalls the 48 hours before Hurricane Hugo's landfall.
The warnings went out to evacuate. The governor issued emergency declarations.
He told family, friends, and neighbors, evacuate, leave, get out.
I remember going out through my neighborhood and telling people, you need to evacuate because this is going to be a bad storm. And I had a lot of people that just said, no, I'll ride it out.
Despite the dire message from meteorologists,
it became obvious that Charleston was definitely going to get hit.
And around midnight, September 22nd, Hurricane Hugo lashed out at everything in its path. That's when Waddell says he moved into his role as a first responder.
I was in the South Carolina Army National Guard. I was a operations officer for the 51st MP Battalion out of Florence, South Carolina.
He led dozens of members of the Guard who were holed up at the National Guard Armory on Cross County Road.
I knew things were going to get very interesting because I was talking to the SLED agent that was at the Emergency Operations Center. And while we were talking, all of a sudden he started yelling on the phone, "The roof's coming off, I gotta go." And he hung up the phone. And the roof blew off the Emergency Operations Center.
Which is essentially the control center, the command center. So what is now the control center for you? I mean, where are you getting information at this point?
We're not. We're totally in the dark.
In the dark, the wind wild and tornadoes spinning all around them. He says when the winds quieted, they knew the risk but went out.
We began to assess what we needed for people and where we would deploy people.
Using landline phones and word of mouth, reports started coming in.
We had reports of McClellanville being destroyed. 17 was completely blocked with trees. Sullivan's Island Bridge here was knocked into the intercoastal waterway. The islands were completely cut off. The assessment from downtown was that buildings had collapsed on King Street. I think the most eerie part about it is that there was absolutely no lights on in Charleston.
You're a professional, trained, but were there moments when this was overwhelming?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
34 years after Hugo and now retired from the National Guard, Waddell says proof of Hugo's impact is seen in hurricane planning and preparation at every level.
Now when you have a major storm coming to the coast, the units, they activate a lot more units, they get a lot more people on the ground, they pre-position better, they get them in there well ahead of time. Hugo was a big learning lesson for the Guard. Hugo was the one that basically started solidifying how the Guard really should, and emergency operations overall in South Carolina to be conducted, because Hugo proved that they needed to do a lot of work.
Coming up,
we hear how those who have lived on our beaches for decades say they've never been more concerned about the barrier islands.
Welcome back to Forecasting the Storm, past to present. Our focus now, beach erosion. It's an issue Storm Team 2 tells you about with each storm, and it's just become second nature for us.
Josh, experts tell me that our shores cannot afford another direct hit, and neighbors on our shores are worried about what the next storm could do.
If Hugo would have hit where Edisto Island is, our islands would be gone.
Lifelong Isle of Palms resident Richard Campson has seen the ebb and flow of the island from every major storm since Hurricane Hugo.
You know, there were houses in the street that got washed off from Front Beach, sand dunes in the street. If houses can be built back, what we really lost was all of our oak trees and big pine trees, and it really changed the landscape of the island. What Mother Nature gives, she can take away.
When larger storms hit, Campson says the water reaches further. Are you worried about your home in particular? Are you worried about?
You know, yeah, I always do. I mean, on the curvature of our east coast really kind of makes it hard for us to take it on the chin.
Now, residents who have lived here their whole life are worried about the future of our coast. Could one large storm really take out the beaches that we call home?
Coastal erosion is something that we deal with a lot at the Geological Survey.
I spoke with Katie Luciano, a coastal geologist at the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, about coastal erosion and the future of our beaches. Erosion is a natural process, but after dozens of coastal storms and a handful of major hurricanes, they've battered the beaches, and the consequences are obvious.
See, all this is sand right here. This is called washover, and these washover terraces occur where you have storms pushing the sand back into sort of these back barriers, so marsh habitats.
The best evidence we have of past erosion is around us on the beach. Boneyards of trees, scrapped sand dunes, and landmarks like the Morris Island Lighthouse.
Is the same lighthouse that we can see out there today. And so you can see it was on land, and because of the erosion, the lighthouse is now out in the middle of the waters.
Naturally, dunes can help with erosion and buffer the impacts from stronger storms. However, one direct hit is all it could take. And it's hard to imagine the low country without the beautiful beaches that we now call home.
There's a price for living in paradise, I guess.
Experts say when storms are gone, they re-nourish our beaches by bringing in hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of sand, preparing ahead and stocking up in case another storm strikes.
Coming up.
A place in the South Carolina weather world you have probably never heard of. We'll take a look inside the fascinating facility where science is turned into action.
Now, the National Hurricane Center is not the only facility dedicated to storm safety.
That's right. I took a trip up to the Insurance Institute for Home and Business Safety to learn just how damaging our severe storms can be.
In the Lowcountry, hurricanes put people and our infrastructure at risk. Here at the IBHS, located in Chester County, South Carolina, I spoke with Christina Gropp, a science producer and meteorologist, about the impact severe weather can have on your property.
We test full-scale homes and businesses against severe weather. We're looking at the intersection of weather and the built environment.
Before Hurricane Andrew 31 years ago, there was never a recorded disaster that cost more than $20 billion. But due to urban development in storm-prone areas, in the last 6 years, we've seen 7. Most notably Hurricane Ian, with more than $50 billion of damage stretching through Florida to South Carolina's coast. While we can't stop the storms, South Carolinians can prepare our properties. New IBHS research has led to stronger building codes and found that some building materials just don't make the cut. Experts say it's time to check in on your own home. From your first line of defense, the roof.
A damaged, unsealed roof can let in up to 9 bathtubs worth of water for every 1 inch of rain that falls. A sealed roof deck can keep out 95% of that water. Make sure the roof is tied to the walls, it's tied to the foundation.
To your shutters.
Once you breach a window, we've seen in the test chamber how that pressurization of your house can cause your roof to come off. Make sure you have them so that when a hurricane does near Charleston, you're ready to put those hurricane shutters up.
Check your garage door.
We found that if you can keep the garage door in place during high winds, there's a 90% chance you will not have structural damage to your roof and walls.
And even outside your home.
Trimming trees, make sure whether it's outdoor patio furniture, your trash cans, things like that are all well secured so that they don't become flying debris. Clean out those gutters, downspouts and soffits.
Gropp recommends other easy updates that you can make now, like taking a home inventory and checking your insurance.
And remember that flood insurance is not usually a part of your traditional homeowner's insurance policy.
To best prepare for this hurricane season, we can learn from our past and listen to advice from experts.
That's all the time we have for forecasting the storm, past to present.
Thanks for joining us over the last half hour. Over the next 6 months, Storm Team 2 is committed to bringing you the lessons you need to know to weather the storms past to the present.